I'm writing this down because I still wake up with the cold in my hands, and maybe getting it out will help. You can use it on your show if you want. I don't care. Just don't ask me to call in. I won't do that. This was February of '81, I think. I was 24 and working odd jobs for a long-haul outfit out of Wichita. Mostly I rode shotgun with guys who needed a second body in the cab for overnight runs, and helped load and unload at the stops. That trip it was me and three others. Mike Kowalski, Jake Renshaw, a kid named Dan whose last name I never learned because he'd only been with the company a week. We were hauling tractor parts up to a depot near the Nebraska line, and the truck was a piece of junk Ford that burned oil every 40 miles, and had a heater that worked when it felt like it. It felt like it about half the time. We took a shortcut Mike swore by, a gravel farm road that cut across the county diagonal. Around 9 o'clock the engine started knocking. By 9:30 we were dead on the side of the road with snow blowing sideways and the temperature dropping hard. The radio said the storm was coming in faster than they'd called it. We had wind, we had dark, and we had whatever was in our duffel bags, which wasn't much. Dan had an inhaler because he got asthma when he got cold. Jake had a pint of bourbon. That was it for survival gear. Mike spotted a light about a mile off, a single yellow point way back from the road. We walked. By the time we reached the farmhouse, my hands were so stiff, I couldn't feel my fingers on the door frame. The farmer who opened the door was older, maybe 60, wiry and hard-faced. He looked at the four of us like we were a problem he didn't want to solve. Behind him the house was dark except for one kerosene lamp on the kitchen table. He had a cup of something in his hand and his eyes were red. I thought he'd been drinking. Later I wasn't so sure. "Truck broke down," Mike said. "Storm's on us. We need a place to wait it out. We can pay." The man stared at us for a long moment. Then he said, "I got nothing in the house. You can have the grain shed. It's got walls and a roof." That's what I got. Mike started to argue. We could see the house had rooms, but Jake put a hand on his arm. The wind was cutting through our jackets and Dan was already wheezing. The farmer pointed toward a low building about 30 yards from the house, past a big bare oak tree. Then he went back inside and shut the door. We crossed the yard. The snow was up past our ankles by then. The grain shed was more like a small barn, one room, dirt floor, a workbench along one wall, and in the corner, on a pair of sawhorses, a plain pine coffin with a white sheet draped over it. No one said anything for a second. Then Mike laughed that big dumb laugh of his. "What? The old man got his mother-in-law stored in here." The coffin lid was off. I don't know why that was the first thing I noticed, but it was. The sheet covered the body completely, but you could see the shape underneath. A woman, small, thin, the ridge of her nose and folded hands pushing up against the cloth. The smell was there, but it wasn't bad. Cold keeps things. The farmer came in behind us carrying 2 wool blankets and an oil lamp. He set the lamp on the workbench and dropped the blankets on a crate. "Don't touch the sheet," he said. "Don't open the window boards. Storm'll pass by morning," Mike said. "You got a dead lady in your tool shed, and you're worried about the window boards." The farmer didn't answer. He looked at the coffin once, just a glance, and then he left and pulled the door shut behind him. I heard him slide something across the outside, a board or a bar. I remember thinking that was wrong, him locking us in instead of locking the body in. But I was too cold and too tired to chew on it. We made the best of it. Jake passed the bourbon. Dan took a hit off his inhaler, and we sat around the lamp eating jerky and crackers from our bags. Mike kept making jokes about our roommate. He walked over to the coffin at one point and raised his bottle toward it. "To the lady of the house," he said. "May she rest in peace and not get chatty." I laughed. We all did. The body didn't move, didn't twitch, didn't do anything except lie there under the sheet like a dead body in a box. And that was exactly what it was, as far as any of us could tell. The idea that it could do anything else was a joke. 4 grown men against one dead farm wife. The only thing in that shed that was going to kill us was the cold, and even that felt manageable with the blankets and the lamp and the bourbon. I woke up because the lamp had gone out and the cold had changed. That's the only way I can describe it. The air in the shed had been cold all night, dry and sharp. Now it was wet cold, the kind that settles in your lungs, and there was a smell with it. Dirt, wet wool, something faintly sweet like old flowers left too long in a vase. Moonlight was coming through the cracks in the window boards, enough to see by, and what I saw pulled everything else out of my head. The sheet was on the floor, the coffin was empty, and the dead woman was standing over Mike. She moved slow, steady, the way water moves over a dam. Her body was small and thin like it had been under the sheet, dressed in a dark print dress with long sleeves. Her feet were bare and gray. Her hair hung down in white strings. She didn't look at me, didn't turn her head toward the sound of my breath catching. She just bent at the waist over Mike's face, stiff, like her spine couldn't curve, and then she exhaled. I saw it. A stream of white vapor came out of her mouth and went into his. It wasn't cold breath, the way you see your own breath in winter. It was thick, almost solid, and it hung in the air for a second before it was gone. Mike's legs kicked once under the blanket. His throat made a short, wet sound, and then he was still. I didn't move. I told myself I was still asleep, that this was one of those dreams where your body freezes up and you can't run. I'd had those before on overnight hauls, sleep paralysis or whatever, where your mind wakes up but your arms and legs won't answer. It felt exactly like that. The dream logic held. If this was a dream, then the thing walking toward Jake's blanket was just my mind throwing up shadows from the bourbon and the cold. If this was a dream, Mike wasn't really dead. I just had to wait it out. She bent over Jake. Same motion, same white vapor. Jake's arm jerked once, and his hand opened and closed on nothing. The sound he made was quieter than Mike's. The dream was starting to crack. I could feel the dirt floor under my back, the splinters in the board I was leaning against, the frozen air smell of snow leaking through the wall cracks. The dead woman straightened up from Jake and turned, still slow, still without any sign she knew I was there, and started toward Dan. I came unstuck, I shouted. Just noise. No words, and kicked Dan's leg hard. He jerked awake, and I saw his face go through about 4 different kinds of confusion in 2 seconds. Then he saw her. She was already bending down toward the spot where Dan had been lying. He was on the floor now, scrambling backward, and she just kept going down toward the empty blanket. Slow and mechanical, like her body was following instructions that didn't update. She didn't turn toward him, didn't track him with her closed eyes. She just continued the motion she'd already started, as if Dan had never moved. Dan didn't wait to figure it out. He grabbed my arm and hauled me up. The door bar was on our side. The farmer had locked us in from the outside, but the latch was simple, a wooden bar across 2 iron brackets. Dan's shoulder hit it and the bar splintered, and we fell out into the snow. We ran. The storm was still going. The snow was halfway to our knees, and we were in our undershirts and jeans and unlaced boots. The cold hit so hard it felt like being punched. The house was dark. No lights, no movement, no sign the farmer had heard anything. Dan was yelling something about a tool shed, a smaller building I hadn't noticed before, maybe 60 yards past the big oak tree near the fence line. He started running toward it. I started to follow. Then I looked back. She was in the doorway of the grain shed, standing still. Then she started walking, not toward me, toward Dan. Dan was 20 yards ahead of me, slogging hard, his breath rasping. He slipped once, got up, slipped again. The tool shed was close. I could see it now, a low wooden box half, buried in snowdrift. The woman's bare gray feet made no sound on the snow. She didn't hurry. She just walked. and the distance closed. Dan reached the tool shed door and pulled at the handle. It didn't open. Frozen shut. He turned and saw her coming, and I saw his eyes go wide. He tried to run sideways, cut around the shed, but the snow was too deep there, and he went down on one knee. She was on him before he could get up. She bent down. The white vapor came out. Dan's body went through the same short convulsion. And then he was face down in the snow, and she was straightening up and turning toward me. Not toward where I was running, toward me. That's when I understood. She wasn't chasing people. She wasn't tracking by sound or sight. She was going through the order Mike, Jake, Dan. The order they'd been lying in. The order she'd started. I was last. She had skipped me when I ran because I wasn't where I was supposed to be. But I was still on the list. I changed direction. The tool shed was useless. Don had proved that. The house was too far and dark, and the farmer wasn't going to open any doors. The only thing between me and the open field was the oak tree, the big one near the fence, its trunk wider than my shoulders. I ran for it. She followed, not fast, not slow, just walking. The snow didn't slow her down any more than it would slow down a fence post. Someone was pushing through a drift. I reached the tree and put my back against it. She was 15 feet away. I went left. She adjusted. I went right. She adjusted again, her head tilted at the same angle, her closed eyes toward the ground. I kept the trunk between us, around and around, my feet slipping, my hands raw from the bark, my lungs burning. The sky was starting to change color. Not sunrise yet, but the black was thinning out to a deep blue-gray. I caught a glint of pale light on the horizon. She didn't tire, I did, my legs gave. I went down on one knee in the snow, and she was suddenly closer, arms reaching, not lunging but just extending. Slow and certain, the way a branch extends from a trunk. Her arms came around either side of the oak. Her fingers were inches from my throat. I could smell her. Dirt, and that sweet, rotting flower scent, and underneath it something cold and breathless, like the air in a root cellar that hasn't been opened in years. Then her arms stopped. I saw her fingers close around the bark, not around me, around the tree. Her body froze mid-motion, bent forward, arms embracing the trunk like a child hugging a parent. The fingers dug in. Her nails, long, yellowed, thick, sank into the oak bark and scraped down, leaving 4 pale gouges in the wood. Then nothing. No breath, no movement, no sound. The sun came over the horizon. A flat band of yellow light slid across the snow and hit the tree and hit her face. She didn't react. She was just a dead woman stuck to a tree. I lay there for a long time. Eventually the farmer came out. He didn't say anything when he saw her. He just looked at the tree, then at me, and then he went back to the house. I heard a truck start. I guess he called someone because the sheriff showed up an hour later, and the ambulance came, and they cut her arms free from the bark with a saw. Her fingers had to be pried loose one by one. The explanation they gave was breathing failure. All 3 of them, Mike, Jake, Dan, respiratory arrest, cause unknown. There was talk of mold spores, of some kind of gas leak from the grain storage. No one asked me what I saw. Really, the sheriff took a statement, and I told him what happened, and he wrote something down that was shorter than what I said, and didn't look me in the eye. I woke up in the county hospital with frostbite in 3 toes and a piece of bark in my coat pocket. I don't know how it got there. I don't remember picking it up. But when I was pulling my things together to sign out, it was there at the bottom of the pocket. A dry, curled strip of oak bark about the length of my thumb, rough on the outside, pale on the inside where the wood had torn, and caught in the inner fibers, tangled in the grain, were a few dark specks that I thought at first were dirt. They weren't dirt. Under the light they had a yellowish-brown translucence, like old fingernail, and one of them still had the curve of a nail edge. I put it back in the pocket. I never showed the sheriff. I never told anyone but you. Last October, the farmer hung himself in that same grain shed. The newspaper said it was grief over losing his wife. Died of a broken heart, the obituary said. I read it twice and put the paper down and went to my desk drawer. The bark is still there. It's cold most of the time. But at night, the really cold nights, it gets colder. Colder than the air in the room, colder than the wood of the desk it sits on. I pick it up sometimes just to check, just to make sure it's still real. It always is.